start is the inflammatory bowel disease. As all you know, there are two spectrum of inflammatory bowel disease. One is the ulcerative colitis and second is the Crohn's disease. The first aspect we will start is the ulcerative colitis. The most important point in ulcerative colitis is the introduction. It is a primary chronic inflammatory disease of unknown etiology and primarily affects the colon and the rectum. The lesions are superficial infiltration of the bowel wall by the inflammatory cells that results in mucosal ulceration and crypt abscesses. Most important is the first population study was in India by Dr. Sood. Total population they have screened is more than 50,000 patients, and the crude prevalence was around 44.3 per 1 lakh, and crude incidence rates were around 6. The most important is the hypothesis, how the ulcerative colitis occurs. One is the etiological hypothesis, that is the persistent infection. Second is the dysbiosis. Third is the defective mucous integrity. And last, the dysregulated immune response. Most important is the model of the IBD pathogenesis is the environmental, mucosal, inflammation, and last is the genetics. These are the various important factors that which are play important role in IBD. Now we have to know about the basis of the IBD, that how the IBD occurs. Now we will discuss in detail about all these mechanisms. That is activation of the antigen presenting cells, that is dendritic cell, or direct stimulation. That is two types of helper cell. One is the type H1 helper cell that occurs in the Crohn's disease, and second is the type 2 helper cell that play important in the ulcerative colitis. The most important is the macrophage that has important role in the inflammation, and the cytokine storms, that is interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and TNF. They are very important. And the most important role is, apart from the pathological, therapeutic role will also decided by these cytokines. Now we will discuss about the clinical features of the ulcerative colitis. It usually occurs in the adults. In India, the ulcerative colitis is more common in males compared to the US and UK. And the clinical course and severity of the disease and the prognosis is variable. Most patients have intermittent attack of symptoms. That is the most important point. Sometimes the patient has symptoms, sometimes they remit. Remit means there is absence of the symptom. They think I am cured, and that is the most important aspect when they stop the medicines. They should not stop the medicine in these aspects. Most of the patients have intermittent attack of symptoms. That is very challenging. Now, most important, apart from these, the common symptoms in ulcerative colitis are blood in stool. That is the most common symptom. Second is the mucus. Third is the consistency of the stool, that is a loose stool, and increased frequency and diffuse abdominal pain, flatulence, tenesmus, and gastrocolic reflex. That is the patient takes a diet and goes for the stool. That is the gastrocolic reflex. Patient also complaining of tenesmus, they desire to defecate, and the gastrocolic reflex, and anorexia and vomiting. In the long-term ulcerative colitis, many patients have anorexia and vomiting as per according to the disease, and sometimes the medicines can also cause anorexia. And pus in stool can be there. Sometimes the stool can cause the vomiting and rectal itching. That is, they have repeated frequency of stool, so the inflammation of the rectal mucosa that leads to the rectal itching. Apart from that, the disease distribution depending on the which part of the colon is involved, either it is limited to the rectum, or it is related to the rectum sigmoid, or the left-sided colon, or pancolitis. These are the distribution of the disease. Now, the most important studies were done in India, in various parts of India. In Punjab, the study was done by North India by Sood et al. Most important, the age of the frequency 37 is the mean age. The duration of the symptoms before diagnosis was varying from 7 to 8 months, and the rectal bleeding was then pain, mucus, urgency can be there, fever can be there. In past history, there can be grading of the disease, that is mild, moderate, and severe. Extent as just we have discussed, it can be limited to the rectum, or it can be involved the left-sided colon or pancolitis. So these are the three important parts. Apart from that, now we are discussing the various other parts of the disease. Now the important other parts of the disease is the diagnosis. Most important, how to diagnose the disease. The diagnosis based on the clinical picture. One is the stool examination, very important. Colonoscopy appearance, histological assessment of the biopsy specimen. Now, the differential diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, sometimes infectious disease can have mimic, chemical symptoms can be there, IBS can be there, ischemia, and miscellaneous. So these are the important differential diagnosis of the disease. Now, with the evaluation, how to diagnose? Most important is proper sigmoidoscopy, or we can plan the sigmoidoscopy. It determines the disease severity obtain the mucosal biopsies, have baseline assessment, and rule out the infectious colitis. Most important is stool examination sometimes may be needed. Sometimes those patients who are already on the steroid or immunosuppressant drugs, we need the Clostridium difficile toxin assay. Mucosal biopsy, very important. Sometimes CMV inclusion bodies we can see on that biopsy. And history of travel or eating, that is very important. The use of NSAIDs, that is NSAID induced colitis. So long-term use of NSAIDs, or we can see the painkillers. We should avoid the use of these painkillers on the long term. These are very harmful. Now, with the clinical severity, there are various scores of the ulcerative colitis. One is that true love score, they're very important. Depending on that, we can differentiate the disease in the mild, moderate, and severe. In mild, the bowel movements are less than 4, blood in the stool is intermittent, temperature is normal, pulse is normal, and hemoglobin is normal. ESR may be raised but less than 30. In moderate disease, the frequency will be 4 to 6. Blood may be present, temperature that may be normal. Now is the severe form disease. That is very important. That is the frequency always or mostly more than 6. And the blood in stool is intermittent or sometimes frequent. Temperature is more. So mostly patient have the feeling of feverish and the pulse is more than 90 and the hemoglobin is less. It is less than 75% of the normal. It may be 8, 9, 6. The range may vary. ESR again very marker of inflammation. They're more than 30. Apart from that, another important marker of inflammation is CRP. CRP is also raised. Or sometimes on examination, you can feel the abdominal tenderness. So these are the important features. And depending on these symptoms, we can divide the severity of the UC in mild, moderate, and severe. Now, apart from that, the many scores, that is remission, mild, moderate, and severe. Again, these endoscopy findings are important. Physician global assessment, rectal bleeding, and stool frequency. These are the 4 important features by we can divide again into mild, moderate. This score is the Mayo score. Nowadays, this score is popular and being used in many centers. Now, this is the typical examination of findings of the sigmoidoscopy. You can see the normal or inactive disease, where you can see the normal mucosa of the sigmoid and rectum. And when the mild disease, that is loss of the vascular pattern, the mucosa, that normal healthy mucosa you cannot see, and mild friability can be there. In the moderate disease, you can see the erythema, absent vascularity, friability slightly increased, erosions can be also there. But in severe disease, you have the diffuse ulceration, more friability, spontaneous bleeding. These are the important features of the severe form of disease, which you can see on sigmoidoscopy. Now, apart from that, there are many other features which you can see. The endoscopic diagnosis is very important. There are strengths of these all scores and there are disadvantages of these scores. Most important is sigmoidoscopy you should do in unprepared bowel to avoid the hyperemia because of the anemia. Now, the grading of the disease is normal mucosa, score 0. 1, there is loss of vascular pattern. 2, there is granulal and non-friable mucosa. And in 3, friability on rubbing can be there. In 4, the spontaneous bleeding can be there and ulceration. So these are the various scores and various sigmoidoscopy findings you can see. Now you can see the treatment. Most important is the medical therapy. Medical therapy can lead to the index of remission or maintenance of the remission. But once the medical therapy fails, you have to go for the surgical therapy. Now the therapy depends on the extent of the involvement of the disease, either proctitis, proctosigmoiditis, or we can say the distal colitis. And third is the left-sided colitis, and lastly pancolitis. Pancolitis definitely severe form of the disease, and it takes the long time the treatment patient takes. The severity of disease depending on the symptoms and depending on the endoscopy findings, depending on the physician global assessment, can be mild disease, moderate disease, and lastly severe disease or fulminant form of the disease can. The most important is the therapy that we have discussed. The therapy depends on all these that we have discussed. Now, apart from that, there are many other features which you can see that now the overview of the management is there are tier approach, that is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. The step-up strategy generally followed in the patient of ulcerative colitis. The tier 1 is the use of 5-aminosalicylates, the ileal budesonides or antibiotics. In second tier comes the steroids. Steroids are double-edged sword. Definitely patient response, but you have to take care. You have to taper the steroids. You have to decrease the dose of the steroids, and you have to maintain the dose of the steroid. Now the use of such mercaptopurines, methotrexate, azathioprine, and now the use of the 3-tier drugs, that is the newer drugs, that is biologicals, TNF alpha antagonists, alpha 4 integrins, and antagonists, and experimental newer drugs, they can also be used. Now the oral 5-ASA release sites, the pentasa can be used, Asacol and azathioprine compounds, all these are used. The delivery of these drugs is mostly on the small intestine and large intestine. So the delivery depends on the site of the release of the drugs. Now the effects of anti-TNF, the newer drugs, is that anti-TNF alpha antibody binds to the two types of homotrimeric TNF alpha. The biological agents play important role, that is block the interaction between TNF alpha molecules and receptor. It neutralizes the TNF alpha mediated pro-inflammatory cells, signaling and inhibit the expression of the inflammatory genes. So this is very important. The newer drugs, this is an important article in the NEJM has been published. Now the treatment that discuss about the drugs, that is 5-aminosalicylates or mesalamines, steroids, azathioprines, and the newer TNF alpha blockers. In the mild to moderate distal colitis, the drugs which are used are the 4 oral aminosalicylates, topical mesalamine, or topical steroids. Topical mesalamine agents are superior to topical steroids or oral. The combination of oral and topical aminosalicylates, they are more effective than either alone. Sometimes we give the oral drug, those patients who are not responding, we add the topical or the suppositories in the form of enema, in the form of suppository, or in the form of, we can say, some suspensions, they can be used. Those patients who are refractory to the oral aminosalicylates or topical, these group of patients need the suppositories or enemas. Yes, they have very important role. Now we come about the other parts of the disease, that is those patients who are refractory to all the above. In maximal dosage you have, still the patient have symptoms, may require treatment with oral steroids or infliximab, or with an induction regime. In the dose of infliximab is 5 milligram per kilogram body weight at the week interval of 0, 2, and 6 weeks. Now the suppositories, they reach up to the 10 centimeter of the colon. The foam reach around 15 to 20 centimeter, and enemas reach up to the spleen flexure. So depending on the disease, when you are suspecting that or you have diagnosed it, that is limited to 20 centimeter, you can use either suppositories or foam. When you are suspecting that it is left-sided colitis, then you can use enemas. Now the maintenance of the remission depending on the mesalamine supporters, that is proctitis or mesalamine enemas in distal colitis. The combination of the oral and topical is more effective than either alone, just we have discussed. Now most important part apart from that, when these drugs fail, then comes the role of the immunomodulators. The immunomodulators which are used are either thiopurines, that is 6-mercaptopurine, or azathioprine, or infliximab, but no corticosteroid. Definitely, these are the newer drugs and they have important role in the management of these. Now, the combination of this 5-aminosalicylates enemas for maintaining remission acid quality, a randomized double-blind study was done. The study was followed for around 1 year for the treatment. The combination therapy of 5-ASA and 5-ASA enemas were given in the dose of twice weekly. The oral therapy was given together with compared with placebo. The main endpoint of the study was the maintenance of remission by 12 months. Out of the combined treatment group, 13 of the 33 patients relapsed. In the oral treatment group, around 23 of 36 patients relapsed. So you can see the response rate. The combined treatment group, the relapse rate was low compared to the oral treatment alone group. Now again, another study, the effect of budesonide enema on remission and relapse in distal ulcerative colitis and proctitis. The conclusion was budesonide enema in the dose of 2 milligram OD appears to be the optimal dose in active distal ulcerative colitis. We could not show that budesonide enema twice weekly is sufficient to maintain remission. So dose definitely daily and should be used depending on the symptoms for the duration. So twice a week is not so effective, it's not so efficient. The most important dose is OD dose. The duration depending on the symptoms, you can extend up to 1 week, 2 week, or 3 weeks. Another studies which we will discuss in all these is the management of the mild disease. How you should start. The begin therapy with oral sulfasalazine in daily doses. Oral steroid you can add. The refractory patients, those are refractory to oral aminosalicylates, you can use the oral steroid in combination with the topical therapy. Patient whose symptoms are so troubling as to demand the rapid improvement, then can you use the steroid. So ideally in the patient who are having mild to moderate extensive disease, you can use the oral aminosalicylates. They can be combined with the topical therapy. Those patients who are not responding, oral steroid can be used. Most important part is apart from the steroid, you can see the other drugs which can be also used is 6-mercaptopurine azathioprine for patients who are not responding to the steroids, who are continuing to having the moderate disease, not so acutely ill as to require IV therapy. So these drugs can be used, but the effect of these drugs takes times. It takes around 1 to 2 months to take effect. So these are the not the urgent drugs, but those group of patients who are not responding to steroids, who are continuing to have the moderate form of the disease, not so acutely ill as to require IV therapy. In these group of patients, you can add on therapy in the form of 6-mercaptopurine and azathioprine. Infliximab, a newer drug, it is used in those group of patients who are steroid refractory, who are steroid dependent, or who are intolerant of these medications. In these group of patients, you can use this. In mild to moderate disease of the extensive colitis, the maintenance of remission is very important. For maintenance of remission, we should use sulfasalazine, olsalazine, mesalamine, and balsalazine. They all are effective in reducing the relapses. Patients should not be treated chronically with steroids. Long-term steroid definitely disadvantage in the form of alopecia, in the form of facial swelling, in the form of diabetes, in the form of osteoporosis, in the form of infertility, in the form of anxiety, depression. They are very long term. So always we avoid the higher dose of the steroid and the long duration of the steroid. We try to stop, but early tapering is harmful because that can lead to the relapse of the disease. Now, the use of azathioprine or 6-mercaptopurine can be used. These are the steroid-sparing agents. They are used for the steroid-dependent patients. The maintenance of remission is not adequately sustained by the amino acids or steroid-dependent but not accurately. These are the group of patients where you can use azathioprine or 6-mercaptopurine as a steroid-sparing agent. Infliximab, very important in the maintaining the improvement and remission in these patients who are responding to the infliximab induction regimes. We can use that. Now, apart from that, you can see how we can improve the form of therapy and how can we increase the disease treatment. Now, most important is the management of the severe colitis. Those group of patients who are refractory to the maximum oral treatment with prednisolone, oral aminosalicylic drugs, and topical medicine, you can use the infliximab. The dose just we have discussed 5 milligram per kilogram body weight, or hospitalization is not necessary urgent, or IV steroid or those patients who present with the toxicity. Yes, IV steroid can be used, but there are definitely disadvantages in the form of toxicity and side effects just we have discussed. Now, we will discuss about the failure to significantly improve within 3 to 5 days. Those group of patients, that is less than 5% of patients, they don't show response even with the newer drugs, even with the optimal therapy. These group of patients needs the treatment with all form of colectomy or IV cyclosporine. But before starting IV cyclosporine, you should be careful about many other parts of the therapy. Now, this is the simple diagram or simple tabular form that is so the active disease can in the form of mild or moderate severe. In mild disease, ulcerative colitis, you can use 5-SA either in form systemic, topical, or both. In Crohn's disease, you can use the topical corticosteroids, distal colonic disease, or budesonide enemas can be used. If there is no effect with these therapies, ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, systemic steroid can be approached. Now, those patients who are not relapsing, who are not responding or relapsing, you can use the immunomodulator, either 6-mercaptopurine or azathioprine. If there is no effect with these drugs, then you can use the newer TNF alpha inhibitors in the form of either infliximab can be used or adalimumab can be used, or nowadays newer form of other therapies are which can use. Now, the infliximab for induction and maintenance therapy for issue. This is a very important article in NEJM published years back. Those patients with moderate to severe active ulcerative colitis treated with infliximab at that week 0, 2, and 6, and every 8 weeks thereafter were more likely to have a clinical response at week 8, 30, and 54 than were those who are receiving the placebo. So this is the important part, that these group of drugs can be used and how we can use these drugs and how we can make the optimum response with these therapies. This is very important. Now, apart from this, there are many other aspects which we have to know about the disease. That is, this is an important study which was done in of around 10 to 11% they have used the drugs, and what the response of these drugs is those group of patients, just less than 5% of group where there is severe disease, they are not responding to the infliximab and all these, cyclosporine can be tried. in severe ulcerative colitis refractory to the steroid therapy. The conclusion was IV cyclosporin is rapidly effective for patients with severe corticosteroid-resistant ulcerative colitis. Number of patients they have taken is 11. 9 of 11 patients treated with cyclosporin had a response within a mean of 7 days as compared to 0 of 9 patients who received placebo. So definitely cyclosporin can be life-saving in these group of patients where there is no therapy and there is no response with the majority of therapies we have used, even TNF alpha inhibitors. All 5% placebo group who received cyclosporin later had a response. So definitely cyclosporin is an effective drug in the severe form of disease, but it should be used with the caution. Now, the incidence of cyclosporin long-term follow-up after cyclosporin treatment in severe ulcerative colitis is 83 of 142 patients had initial response to cyclosporin and avoid colectomy during hospitalization. And the lab table analysis showed that 33 of patients require colectomy at 1 year and 88 will require colectomy at 7 years. So cyclosporin again long-term is not helpful, and you cannot use the drug for long duration. So even those patients who initially responded to cyclosporin, ultimately they will around 70% to 80% to 90% need colectomy in the longer duration of the disease, 7 years. So conclusion, our cyclosporin is an effective short-term disease used for short to medium-term treatment for patients with severe ulcerative colitis, but at 7 years, 88% will require the colectomy. Azathioprine naive patients have better outcome. Those group of patients who were on azathioprine, definitely the response with adding the cyclosporin was high, and these patients need the colectomy in the fewer percentage. So this is very important about this drug. Now, lastly comes the surgery. Many patients they say, "Sir, I am taking the drug for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. How long should I take the drug?" This is very important question on many patients. We are able to answer that question, but we say yes, you should have the response with the drugs. Lastly, when all drugs fail, have multiple relapses, then lastly the surgery is definitely option. Surgery can be used in these group of patients. I will clarify. One is the refractory severe acute ulcerative colitis. Second is the toxic megacolon group of patients. There is very high risk of perforation. Are the spontaneous or iatrogenic uncontrollable colonic hemorrhage, you are given the best treatment, still present of persistent bleeding per rectum, then surgery is needed. Intolerable or unacceptable side effect from the medical therapy, colonic dysplasia or carcinoma, a large bowel obstruction, systemic complication, growth retardation. These are the 8 to 9 important indications for surgery. However, the surgery nowadays required in less than 5%, 95% patients responded well to the medical treatment. However, the treatment may be costly. Now, the most important is mucosal healing. The most important aspect is when to stop the treatment and what you say, yes, now you can stop the treatment. This is the aspect of the mucosal healing. The healing can be assessed by the endoscopic assessment of disease activity. It usually reflects the resolution of the visible ulcers. Advantage of absence of ulcer readily recognized in Crohn's disease. In Crohn's treatment, once you again do colonoscopy, you say there is disappearance of ulcer. Definitely, mucosal healing is there. Paradoxically, more difficult to define in ulcerative colitis because uncommonly associated with the visible ulceration. So this is very important. Now, definition of the mucosal healing is there is no validated definition. Mucosal healing can be there or endoscopic remission can be there. In UC, there is absence of friability, absence of blood, absence of erosions, and absence of ulcers in all visualized segments of the gut mucosa. That define the mucosal healing. In Crohn's disease, the total disappearance of all the mucosal ulceration. Experts conclude that abnormal vascular pattern in absence of other features of disease is still compatible with mucosal healing. So these are the important aspects of mucosal healing that you should know, and that mucosal healing will decide when you have to stop the drug. Now, the Mayo Clinic endoscopy subscore that is most commonly used, it defines the mucosal healing as a score of less than 1, that is non-mucosa or loss of vascular pattern, but no mucosal friability when the endoscopy subscore was 2 or 3 as a trial entry. So these are the important aspects of the mucosal healing you should know. Now, the clinical relevance of the mucosal healing. Most importantly, early mucosal healing with infliximab is associated with improved long-term clinical outcome in ulcerative colitis. This is an important study published in Gastroenterology 2011. Those patients who underwent the endoscopy evaluation at weeks 0, 8, 30, and 54. The ACT1 study and categorized into 4 subgroups by the week 8. That is depending on the Mayo subscore. Association of week 8 endoscopy subscore and subsequent colectomy risk symptoms and contribution use outcomes were analyzed. Mucosal healing, that is Mayo endoscopy subscore of 0 or 1, that is the mild. The infection treated patient with longer or with lower week 8 subendoscopy scores were less likely to progress to colectomy through 20, 40, 54 weeks of follow-up evaluation. The most important is infliximab is associated with a high degree of mucosal healing. The degree of mucosal healing after 8 weeks of infliximab correlated with improved clinical outcome, including the colectomy. Now, the mucosal healing in inflammatory bowel disease results from a Norwegian study, that is 740 patients they have done in ulcerative colitis in Crohn's disease between 1990 to 1994. The extensive disease diagnosis was significantly predictive of mucosal healing after 1 year. The mucosal healing was significantly associated with low risk of future colectomy. So we conclude that those group of patients who have mucosal healing with the treatment, they are the group of patients who are to go in remission. They have less risk of colectomy, less risk of chance of colectomy. These are the important predictor of response. So most important aspect of stopping of the drug depends on the mucosal healing. So mucosal healing reduce surgeries, yes, definitely. Now the results give further strength to the use of mucosal healing as a clinical predictor of treatment and goal in the inflammatory bowel disease. So potential relationship between mucosal healing and cancer in ulcerative colitis, that is controlled prospective studies are lacking, but still a large cohort study from Italy indicates that the low risk of colorectal cancer in those patients who are receiving azathioprine for up to 17 years in the presence of mucosal healing. This is very important. In many studies, they have used azathioprine up to 5, 6, 7. This is the largest study where it can be used up to the 14 years. Now, the mucosal healing is important endpoint in clinical trials, and anti-inflammatory drugs such as azathioprine, anti-TNF antibodies can induce mucosal healing. Mucosal healing predicts the lower hospitalization rates and sustained clinical remission and resection-free survival. So, most important goal of IBD therapy is the mucosal healing. The newer agent just we have discussed is the alpha 4 beta 7 integrin, a cell surface glycoprotein on circulating B and T lymphocytes. Another drug is the vedolizumab, a humanized monoclonal antibody that specifically recognizes the alpha 4 beta 7 heterodimer. It selectively blocks the gut lymphocyte trafficking without interfering the trafficking to the CNS. Again, the newer drug is the natalizumab, a monoclonal antibody with efficacy in multiple sclerosis and Crohn's disease. It inhibits the both alpha 4 beta 1 and alpha 4 beta 7 integrins associated with the progressive multifocal leukocyte. Important side effect. We should care about that. Now, natalizumab and vedolizumab differ in that natalizumab blocks the lymphocyte trafficking to multiple organs, including the brain and gut. So these are new drugs we can use. And vedolizumab is an induction and maintenance therapy for ulcerative colitis. The effect of this study in 2013 in NEJM was vedolizumab was more effective than placebo as an induction and maintenance therapy for ulcerative colitis. Cancer surveillance. Again, you have to be careful. Those group of patients who are having the long study or long duration of the disease, definitely they are in key risk of cancer or malignancy in these group of patients. We should be very careful about that. After 8 to 10 years of colitis, annual or biannual surveillance colonoscopy is needed with multiple biopsies at regular intervals to be performed. In high-grade dysplasia in flat mucosa is an indication for colectomy, and low-grade dysplasia in flat mucosa an indication for colectomy to prevent the progression to high-grade of neoplasia. So this is very important. Those group of patients who are having the disease duration for longer, either 8 years or 10 years, in these group of patients, ultimately colectomy can be needed, either high-grade dysplasia or low-grade dysplasia, because low-grade dysplasia will also progress in the long term to the high-grade dysplasia. So this is very important for cancer surveillance. So this is in nutshell about the ulcerative colitis. The second aspect of inflammatory bowel disease which we are going to discuss is the
Doctor, just I'll interrupt you for a minute. Some
Yes,
slides are not showing in YouTube. You'll have to
Okay.
close it and share it once again. Top sharing में.
Okay, share. Okay.
स्लाइड क्लोज कीजिए, फिर से शेयरिंग में फिर से कीजिए सर, ऊपर में. You open the slides, sir?
About to open.
Okay.
I have opened slides now.
Yeah.
Now we are discussing about the Crohn's disease, na? And slide is about to open. It will take around 30 seconds. File is being loaded.
Okay.
Now you are getting slides.
No, not yet coming, sir.
I have loaded it. Oh, and
Uh,
share
one-
option. Share. I have done the sharing.
Sharing, there is Komesh. Still YouTube slides are not visible.
Why not? Because what should I do now?
Share my screen. Sir, you do share my.
Share my screen. Okay, share my screen. I have done. Now,
You have opened the slides?
now I'm sharing the screen, but slides are not getting. 1 second.
You share the screen or share the content?
I am sharing the screen. Na?
Komesh,
Contents are not getting.
share the content also, no?
You sharing the screen option is there. Contents, there is no option. Na? Contents.
1 second, doctor. 1 second.
You are sharing your screen. The option is that is written. Na?
It's not there. Sharing screen option is not there, doctor.
Share my screen option is there.
Hmm.
And
Share
I have
content.
done that. I have done that, but now my slides are not visible.
Open the PPT, sir.
No, sir, 1 second, 1 second.
Open the PPT. Do slideshow.
Yes, I have opened the PPT.
Do slideshow.
1 second, 1 second. Yes, now slides. I am able to see.
It's visible in WebEx. 1 minute, sir. It's Komesh still not visible in YouTube.
Why not visible? I have shared my screen also, and sharing Crohn's disease option is also written. Why not visible on
Screen.
YouTube?
Even its video is not visible here, no?
Why not visible? You are not visible. Yes, definitely. Now what should I do? Chat participants, share content. Share content. I should go to share content.
Yeah, do it, sir. Share content you do, sir.
I have done the share content. Then in share content, there are many other things are there. Microsoft Teams.
You are visible. You are visible. Slides.
Share content. If I will go, the slide will be not able to see. Na?
Ah.
If I will go to the share content, then slide will be not visible.
No, you share the screen only. Your slides are visible. You will be visible in the small.
Oh, 1 second, 1 second. Again, share. I should go to share option. Share files. Share my screen. I should go share files.
Yeah, share file, share screen.
Share my screen. I have done.
Share content.
Or share. 1 second. Share content. Share. There is no option of share content. There is share my screen option, share file, and share application. There are 3 options only. And now I should go to share file so that I can able to see the slides. Na? That is very important.
Yeah, share screen. Share file, share screen, share contents.
I have done all these. Now I'm sharing again. My slides are able to see.
No, we
Still,
are not able to see your slides.
No, they will be open in 30 seconds. You will see.
Okay.
Now you are able to see my slides?
Yeah, we can see your slides in WebEx.
Yes. Now I should start or we should wait on YouTube?
1 minute, sir. YouTube will take 1 more minute. Then it's gone. Yeah, YouTube also visible now, sir.
Now visible?
YouTube, 1 minute, sir. 1 minute, sir. YouTube not visible. Huh? YouTube will, yeah. Only his he is visible. Huh?
Of sharing Crohn's disease, it is option of sharing Crohn's disease is there.
He's not coming now. YouTube. He's opened the file here. Sir, you have shared content and clicked on the PPT, no, sir?
Yes, I have shared all these. I have shared my screen option. I have shared my
ಅವರೋಡ ಇದು ಒಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ಅವ್ರ ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ ಒಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ ಹಾ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಸರ್ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ವಿಸಿಬಲ್ ಓಕೆ ಲೆಟ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಸರ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್
Okay. Now the second part of inflammatory bowel disease, we are going to discuss the Crohn's disease. That is very important and more fatal and more serious and more severe than the ulcerative colitis. We are going to discuss about the Crohn's disease. The most important is the introduction about the Crohn's disease. That is a lifelong disease arising from an interaction between the genetic and environmental factors. The ECO provides the various definition in the Crohn's disease. Most important is the introduction of the disease. One is the active disease. Second is the remission, response, relapse. Relapse can be early, infrequent, or frequent. Patient may be steroid refractory, steroid dependent. Recurrence, that can be morphological, clinical. Disease can be localized or extensive. This is the aspect of the introduction. The most important in introduction is the score of the Crohn's disease. That is Crohn's disease activity index. The very important points in Crohn's disease activity index are liquid or very soft stool can be there, abdominal pain can be there, general well-being, features of extraintestinal disease, opiate use for diarrhea, abdominal mass, hemoglobin value, and body weight. So these are the important points of these variables. The one is the liquid or soft stool. There are two important points for that is stool count summoned from daily for 7 days. Abdominal pain, sum of 7 days of daily, rating as 0, at none, mild, moderate, or severe. General well-being, it is sum of 7 days of score, daily rating as 0, that is generally well, 1 is slightly below par, 2 poor, and 3 is very poor, 4 is terrible. And features of extraintestinal disease. Any of the following present during the 7 days of daily rating, that is arthritis or arthralgia, skin or mouth lesions, including the pyoderma gangrenosum, erythema nodosum, acanthamus nigricans, and sometimes stomatitis. Iritis or uveitis, that is the eye manifestation, or anal fissure can be there, fistula or perirectal abscesses can be there. Other external fistula can be there, other coloileal, ileocolonic can be there. And lastly, the temperature, that is fever more than 100. Now the opioid use for diarrhea, yes or no? And abdominal mass, yes or no? Questionable or definite? And hemoglobin value, that is for males 47 and for females 42. And lastly, body weight, that is reduction in the weight. So these are the important, you can see 3 and 3, 6 and 7. 7 important variables. And if various points are given to these 7 depending on the scale. And this is the very important index, Crohn's disease activity index. You should follow in the treatment and diagnosis before starting treatment. Now, the active disease, those patients of Crohn's disease who are having the activity index or Crohn's disease active index more than 220. Remission is widely accepted as a Crohn's disease active index less than 150. Response defined as a decrease in Crohn's disease activity index more than 100 points. And lastly, the most important point in this is that relapse is very important. Relapse is used to define a flare of symptoms in patient with established Crohn's disease who is in clinical remission either spontaneously or after medical treatment. Relapse should be preferably confirmed by the laboratory parameters, that is imaging in the form of endoscopy or other imaging in clinical practice. A Crohn's disease activity index of more than 150 with an increase of more than 100 points have been suggested to define the relapse. So most important point is Crohn's disease activity index more than 150 with increase of more than 100 points very important marker of the relapse. Now, an arbitrary but clinically relevant period less than 3 months after achieving remission with previous therapy defines early relapse. Before 3 months, patient again developing symptoms that define the early relapse. Infrequent relapse means less than one time a year. Frequent relapse more than 2 times a year. Now, patients who have active disease, despite prednisone dose of 1 milligram per kilogram per day for a period of 4 weeks, seems to be steroid refractory. You have given the maximum dose of steroid in a 60 kg individual, 60 milligram steroid has been given. In spite of that, patient are still having the active disease after 4 weeks of this therapy seems to be steroid refractory group. Steroid dependent patients who are either unable to reduce steroids below equivalent or prednisone 10 milligram per day within 3 months of starting steroid, or those who are having the relapse in 3 months of the steroid, stopping the steroids. This is very important. The term recurrence is best used to define the reappearance of the lesions after surgical resection. Or morphologic recurrence means the appearance of the new Crohn's disease lesions after complete resection of macroscopic disease, usually in the neoterminal ileum or at the anastomosis site. Clinical recurrence, the appearance of Crohn's disease symptoms after complete resection of macroscopic disease. Endoscopic recurrence is currently evaluated and graded as 0 means no lesions, 1 fewer than 5 aphthous lesions, 2 more than 5 aphthous lesions with normal mucosa between the lesions, or lesions confined to the ileocolonic anastomotic lining less than 1 centimeter. Diffuse aphthous ileitis with diffusely inflamed mucosa, diffuse ileal inflammation with large ulcers, nodules, or narrowing. So these are the very important 1, 0, no lesion, 1, few or less than 5 aphthous lesions, 2, that is more than 5 aphthous lesion or lesion confined to the ileocolonic anastomotic lining, 3, diffuse aphthous ileitis with diffuse inflamed mucosa, and 4th is diffuse ileal inflammation with large ulcers, nodules, or narrowing. In hyperemia and edema alone are not considered as signs of recurrence. This is very important until or unless they have ulcer. And localized disease, that is intestinal Crohn's disease affecting less than 30 centimeter in extent. This usually applies to the ileocolonic ileocecal location, that is less than 30 centimeter of ileum plus right colon, but could apply to the isolated colonic disease also, or contribute to proximal intestinal disease. So this is varies. Either can be isolated involvement of colon, either can be isolated involvement of ileum, but the disease is in a segment of less than 30 centimeters seems to be the localized disease. Now the extensive disease, that is intestinal Crohn's disease affecting more than 100 centimeter extent, whatever the location, either ileum or ileocolonic or only colonic. This applies to the sum of inflammation in the discontinuous segments. This definition of extensive disease recognizes the stage with greater inflammatory burden and implication for medical and surgical decision making. So this is very important for the extensive disease. You should know about the extensive or localized form of the disease, because this is the important classification that decides your treatment and your duration of therapy and your long duration of treatment. The most important features in Crohn's disease is chronic diarrhea, the most common symptom. Compared to the bleeding per rectum, that is 90% ulcerative colitis, compared to the Crohn's disease, where blood or mucus can be seen in the stool, but it is around 40 to 50% of patients of Crohn's colitis, but less frequent than in the ulcerative colitis, just we have discussed. The perineal fistula, these are very common, not so common, but they are common. They are present in 4 to 10% of patients at the time of diagnosis. Abdominal pain and weight loss are seen in about 80 and 60% respectively of patients before diagnosis. So the common symptoms of Crohn's disease are chronic diarrhea, bleeding per rectum associated with mucus or not, perineal fistula, abdominal pain, and lastly weight loss. These are the 5 to 6 important features in the clinician you should know before diagnosis. Now the chronic non-specific symptoms, these are similar to the IBS. Many times we confuse, we say yes it is IBS. Once you do the colonoscopy, you see the flare of the disease, you see the aphthous ulceration, you see the longitudinal ulceration, you see the strictures, you see the fistulas. So sometimes you should not label IBS before doing colonoscopy. Unexplained anemia, definitely growth failure in children should also be considered and should have a approach for diagnosis. Otherwise, they will lead to the delay in diagnosis. More acute presentation may occur in acute terminal ileal Crohn's disease may be mistaken for acute appendicitis. May also present with the extraintestinal manifestation Crohn's disease. The abnormalities of the musculoskeletal system are the most common extraintestinal manifestation of the Crohn's, apart from the GI. The diagnosis, single gold standard for diagnosis of Crohn's is not available. The diagnosis is confirmed by the clinical evaluation or combination of the endoscopical, histological, radiological, and lastly biochemical investigation. So definitely a multidisciplinary approach in diagnosis of Crohn's disease is very important. A change in diagnosis to UC during the first year occurs in about 5% of the cases. An IBD restricted to the colon that cannot be allocated to Crohn's disease or UC category is best termed as IBD undetermined. Now, the anemia and thrombocytosis, they are very important markers in the blood picture. You see anemia and thrombocytosis. CRP broadly correlates with the disease activity and indicates the serial change in inflammatory activity because of short half-life of 19 hours. So, the patients who are responding or who are on treatment, CRP will fastly decline. So, the CRP level or serial level of CRP very important for monitoring the disease activity, and serial changes of inflammatory activities can be identified. High CRP value are indicative of active disease or an infectious complication, just we have discussed. Now, the diagnosis, apart from that, fecal calprotectin and lactoferrin have been proved useful for diagnosis of active inflammation. The fecal concentration of calprotectin and lactoferrin reflects the migration of neutrophil through the inflamed bowel mucosa. The fecal calprotectin might also be useful in deciding which patients should undergo an endoscopic investigation, especially in the pediatric setting. So, increased fecal level of calprotectin and lactoferrin reflects the intestinal inflammation of any cause, whereas the normal calprotectin levels could exclude the IBD with high accuracy. The most important is the level of fecal calprotectin and lactoferrin, important marker in diagnosis. A serological testing for the newer marker, the ASCA and ANCA, may be used and adjunct to diagnosis, but their accuracy is not too high. Ileocolonoscopy with multiple biopsy specimen is well established first line procedure for the diagnosis of Crohn's disease. The endoscopic hallmark of Crohn's disease is the patchy distribution inflammation with the skip lesion. Since we are reading in the UG classes from the MBBS, that is the skip lesions, very important feature of Crohn's disease. Now, the Crohn's disease ulcer ceases to be longitudinal, may be associated with a cobblestoning appearance, that is fistulous orifice and stricture. In severe disease, you can see the deep ulceration, that is eroding the muscle layer. Mucosal detachment can you see, an ulcer limited to submucosa but extending to more than 1/3 of a defined colonic segment. That is very important. Now, the diagnosis. When there is active disease, the value of full colonoscopy is limited by the high risk of bowel perforation. Colonoscopy should be postponed until the clinical condition improves in a patient of Crohn's disease. For the initial diagnosis, the analysis of a full colonoscopy biopsy series should be done rather than a single biopsy, produce the most reliable diagnosis. That is, full colonoscopic biopsy series. Samples are preferably obtained both from the involved and non-involved areas. Both you should take the sample. For the reliable diagnosis of Crohn's disease, a minimum of 2 biopsies from 5 sites around the colon, including rectum, as well as from ileum should be obtained. That is minimum of 2 biopsies from 5 sites. That is around 10 biopsies from 5 separate sites of the colon should be taken. You should include the rectum and ileum both. The microscopic features of colon in patient of Crohn's disease are focal or chronic lymphocytes or plasma cell can be there. Focal crypt irregularity can be there. Granulomas may be there. They are not related to the crypt injury. Now, this is a typical diagram. You can see the deep inflammation in the patient of Crohn's disease. You can see the microgranulomas can be also there. This is the typical endoscopy picture. You can see the cobblestoning. You can see the longitudinal ulceration. You can see the stitching lesion. Sometimes the disease can be confused with the malignant CCA colon. In the first picture, you can see the mass-forming lesion seen in the colon. Now, the classification of Crohn's disease has been classified by the disease phenotype, that is Montel classification. Disease actually mostly according to the Crohn's disease activity index, and response to therapy, that is mainly steroid dependent or steroid refractory. Now, the Montel classification, age at diagnosis, location and behavior. Age at diagnosis, that is A1, A2, A3. A1 means less than 16 years, A2 that is 17 to 40 years, and A3 or 40 years. So at the age for diagnosis, these are 3 important features. Location, that is L1, L2, L3. L1 that is ileal, L2 colonic, L3 isolated upper ileocolonic, and L4 isolated upper digestive. So location wise, you can classify as L1, L2, L3, L4, and age at diagnosis A1, A2, A3, A1 less than 16, A2, 16 to 14, A3 more than 40. And behavior of the disease, that is B1, B2, that is non-stricturing, non-penetrating B1, B2 that is stricturing, and B3 that is penetrating, and lastly P that is perennial disease. So these are the important 4 points of behavior: B1, B2, B3. B1 is non-stricturing, non-penetrating, B2 is stricturing, B3 penetrating, and P perennial disease. So this is a very important classical Montel classification that you should know before labeling the diagnosis of Crohn's disease. Objective evidence of disease activity should be obtained. Inflammatory markers or colonoscopy as appropriate before starting or changing medical therapy. The appropriate source efficacy is influenced by the various factors, that is the balance between the drug efficacy and potential side effects, and previous response to treatment, and presence of extra manifest or complication. The choice is best tailored to the individual group of patients. Now, the mildly active or localized ileocolitical Crohn's disease, the budesonide 9 milligram daily is a favored therapy to induce remission in mild active localized ileocecal Crohn's disease. Although it is inferior to the conventional steroid, it has fewer side effects. That is most important. We are worried about the side effect of steroid. Budesonide is the newer steroid that have slightly less efficacy, but side effects are definitely very low. 50 to 60% of patients with mild ileocecal Crohn's disease attain remission at 8 weeks of budesonide. Now, the mildly active localized ileocecal disease, the systemically antibiotics with or without mesalazine are not recommended because the side effects are common and effectiveness has not proven in the luminal Crohn's disease. Rifaximin could be used in selected group of patients. Now, moderately active localized ileocecal Crohn's disease. For moderately active disease, either budesonide or prednisolone are appropriate initial induction therapy. Prednisolone is highly effective, but more commonly causes side effects than budesonide. And anti-TNF-based strategies can be used as an alternative for patients who are steroid refractory or steroid intolerant. In patients refractory to steroid or anti-TNF, vedolizumab newer drug can be used. For some patients who have infrequent or relapsing disease, restarting steroid with an immunomodulator may be appropriate. Now, the severe form of disease, the initial treatment of severe ileal Crohn's disease includes prednisone or IV hydrocortisone. Anti-TNF, that we have discussed, is still the best result for patients who are not responding to the initial therapy and for whom surgery is considered inappropriate. However, the therapeutic strategy for individuals should be guided on the patient features, cost effectiveness, physician and surgeon decision between surgery and anti-TNF therapy. Now, severely active localized celiac disease, some experts advocate surgery in reference to the anti-TNF alpha therapy. Others advocate resection if medical therapy is not effective within 2 to 6 weeks. When starting anti-TNF therapy in patients in Crohn's disease who are naive to immunosuppression, combination therapy with infliximab and azathioprine is the more effective than either alone. However, the effect of azathioprine will take a time of around 6 to 8 weeks. In the severely actively localized ileocecal Crohn's disease, patients who are infrequently relapsing disease, restarting steroid with an immunomodulator may be appropriate. In patients refractory to steroid and anti-TNF, vedolizumab is an appropriate alternative. Just we have discussed similar in the ulcerative colitis. The colonic disease systemic steroid such as penicillin or are equivalent effective, whereas in the ileal disease, budesonide has no role in treating colonic disease. The immunomodulators are used as steroid-sparing agents. Those who have relapsed, if symptoms persist in spite of all these steroids or when patient relapse within a month of their last steroid dose, anti-TNF can be recommended. For some patients who are infrequently relapsing, the restarting steroid with an immunomodulator may be appropriate. Now, the colonic disease, if patients do not respond or lose response to anti-TNF therapy, then surgery or vedolizumab may be used. There is no evidence that mesalazine is effective for active colonic Crohn's disease, but opinion still varies about the value of topical mesalamine as adjunctive therapy in left-sided colonic Crohn's, particularly in the proctitis group of patients. Now, the extensive small bowel disease, the inflammation burden and level of the malabsorption is greater in extensive, that is more than 100 centimeters, than in the localized small bowel disease, often resulting in the nutritional deficiencies because the ileum is the important site of the absorption of vitamin B12. The treatment with steroid and the early introduction of concomitant immunomodulators is considered appropriate. Now, the early introduction of anti-TNF therapy should be considered, especially those group patients who have the clinical indicators of poor prognosis, that is present at the younger age, have the extensive disease, and have the perennial form of disease. Extensive small disease should be more aggressive given the well-documented adverse consequences of the long-term therapy of the disease. Now, the Crohn's disease is not limited to the ileocolonic. It can have involvement in the esophagus. It can have involvement in the stomach and duodenum. So, evidence-based therapies from many case series have shown that mild esophageal or gastroduodenal Crohn's disease may be treated with PPI alone. More severe or refractory disease requires additional use of steroid or anti-TNF-based strategy. Now, treatment of the relapse or early relapse. Any patient who has an early relapse should be started on an immunomodulator to reduce the risk of further relapse. Patients who have a relapse or moderate or severe disease should be considered on anti-TNF therapy since infection is more effective than azathioprine in early, that is duration of less than 2 years of disease. There is also significant advantage in using the azathioprine in combination with the infliximab. Now, treatment of relapse early vedolizumab may be used considered those patients who are not responding to anti-TNF therapy. Now, the steroid refractory group of patients. For active Crohn's disease, these are refractory to steroid, again immunosuppressive in the form of anti-TNF or vedolizumab may be used. Surgical options should also be considered and discussed at an early stage because sometimes those group patients who are not responding within 4 to 6 weeks, they are likely to go in intestinal obstruction or sometimes perforation can be there and perforation peritonitis can be there. The timing of surgery depends on the severity of the symptoms, inflammatory burden, and patient's view and extent of the disease. Now, the steroid dependence, those group patients have immunomodulators, they are effective in steroid dependent Crohn's disease. Steroid dependent patient may derive greater benefit from early introduction of biological. A very effective approach to spare steroid is the early introduction of anti-TNF agents. Ileal resection, that is the surgery, is the alternative for those patients who are localized disease depending on other disease features. Now, the medical management of patient in medically induced remission. Smoking should be discouraged in all group of patients with Crohn's disease. How smoking can be used in UC. In view of high risk of relapse and of steroid dependence, azathioprine is favored if remission has been achieved with the systemic steroids. Now, most important part is that smoking should be discouraged in all patients in view of high risk of relapse and steroid dependence. And azathioprine is favored if remission has been achieved with systemic steroid. Although good at inducing remission, steroids are ineffective at maintaining remission. There are no trials between different steroid tapering regimes, and a standard regimen differed between centers. Mercaptopurine can be tried in patients who are intolerant to azathioprine, and those group of patients who are intolerant. Mercaptopurine can be tried in patients who are intolerant of azathioprine. Methotrexate is an alternative, especially for patients intolerant of thiopurines. So, these are the newer drugs which we can use. Now, lastly, I want to discuss is those group of patients who are not responding to these, then you can use the newer therapies. For maintenance therapy, for patients who have in long-term remission on thiopurine maintenance therapy, seizures of treatment may be considered in the absence of objective signs of inflammation. No recommendation can be given for the duration of treatment with methotrexate. Prolonged use of anti-TNF agents may be considered if needed. Now, most important, this is the end of these slides. Now, my take-home message for all clinicians, all pharma persons, and all Facebook and my YouTube viewers is inflammatory bowel disease are the spectrum of disease in the form of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. These are the two separate diseases. The dietary recommendation many patients ask, that is very important. Now, most important is the homemade food they can use. In the patient of ulcerative colitis, the dietary recommendation is normal diet they can take. Even they can use milk. But those group of patients, after taking milk, they have complaint of diarrhea, they should avoid milk. Otherwise, there is no need of stopping the milk because there is calcium malabsorption very common in ulcerative colitis or IBD or Crohn's. In Crohn's disease, where there is inflammation of small bowel is there, stitching form of disease is there. So low fiber diet I recommend because high fiber diet that is in the form of salads, in the form of seeds, in the form of those fruits who are having the hard shell, these fruits should be avoided. Those having the high fiber, they should be avoided in Crohn's disease because they can lead to obstruction, they can lead to postprandial fullness, they can lead to crampy pain. So diet recommendation in patient of IBD is In ulcerative colitis, they can use the normal diet. Milk should be avoided in those group of patients who have milk intolerance or lactose intolerance. That is, after taking milk, they have complaint of frequency of diarrhea, or there is gurgling sound, or there is postprandial fullness. Yes, in Crohn's disease, that recommendation is low fiber diet is recommended, because high fiber diet will lead to the intestinal obstruction, will have postprandial fullness, and sometimes crampy pain because of high fiber. And high fiber is mostly in those fruits who are having the hard shell, in the salads, or those vegetables where there are seeds. They should be avoided in Crohn's disease. So this is the end of my presentation. Any queries or questions you can ask.
There is one question in the chat box, Doctor.
Yes.
Nishant Padmala, what about modifications of meal?
Just I have discussed. There is no ideal recommendation is recommended, but homemade food should be used. Food of hotels and restaurants should be avoided. In patient of ulcerative colitis, you can use the normal diet. Milk should be avoided only in those patients who have lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance means after taking milk, they have increased frequency of stool, they have gurgling sounds, they have postprandial fullness, and they complain that uneasiness or vomiting. Otherwise, there is no need of stopping of the milk. Many gastroenterologists recommend that you should stop milk in patient of inflammatory bowel disease, but there is no recommendation of stopping milk. Milk can be used until or unless you are having the symptoms of lactose intolerance. Yes, in Crohn's disease, low fiber diet is recommended because the involvement of the small bowel and increased chance of intestinal obstruction or stricturing form of the disease. The low fiber diet will be helpful. High fiber can lead to the crampy abdominal pain, can lead to the intestinal obstruction, or can have postprandial more and more fullness. Another question, koi?
I don't think so far any other questions, Doctor. No other questions. Anybody? I posted no questions. I think that's all, Doctor. I think no questions.
Okay.
Okay.
How?
Thank you, Doctor, for sparing and talking so elusively about IBD. And definitely, it was a very interesting session for everybody. Thank you all for joining this evening session with Dr. Ashok Jajaria. Once again, thanks to all, and thank you, Dr. Ashok, for sparing a valuable time. Thank you, sir.
Okay.